My name is Mo Meixi, and you can call me Macy. So I'm currently a year two student at HKUST, majoring in sustainable and green finance. And I'm from Guangdong province, the mainland. So I can speak Mandarin, Cantonese, and English. So my personal interest is geography, urban planning, and also land economy, etc. So the reasons why I want to apply to these positions teaching geography is because firstly, geography is my personal interest, as I mentioned before, and also I received an offer from CUHK major in geography and resource management last year, even though I did not choose to commit to that offer due to personal planning. I'm currently still studying the environmental topics and also sustainability linked topics that is also like related to geography to some extent. So that's basically why I applied to teach geography as the part-time job. And the other reasons that why I want to apply to Canada Elites because firstly it's in Hong Kong and I'm currently a college student studying Hong Kong. So I believe that's a great opportunity for me to like to try to apply to a part-time job and fully utilize my knowledge to gain more exposure from the career. So that's my intentions. So and also the second step is that um because geography is really like I'm passionate about geography and also wants to like teach something that is useful, valuable to the students that is actually like the me before. So actually at the time when I was studying geography in A level and also the other courses, I really wanted that there could be someone to give some advice to me and like guide me no matter is in terms of academic stuff or like personal development. So I really want to help the others who is just like me before to find out their interest and also their career developments later. Because I think it's also a valuable challenge. I think it's also a challenge for me, but it will be also be a valuable experience if I commit to that. So I'm really glad that I'm now capable to do that and commit to the dream job that I used want to before. So I believe that will be both a great experience and gain more insights for both me as the tutor and also my students. Um, so today I'm going to provide a demo course based on the instructions provided by the HR colleague. So the courses is related to the revision course, and I'll mainly focus on the advanced paper two, and also some kind of questions from past paper. Um, so now let's get started. Okay. So this course agenda will be like from uh past paper questions, and then we'll break down all the questions and try to come up with some structure or ideas to answer that. And then I'll provide a case study to gain more insights from like how to answer the similar types of questions so that it's not only like figure out these questions uh, answers, but also figure out how to answer the similar type of questions in the future. And here comes our first questions. So from section title, we can see that the question is from globalization and superpowers topics. So it reminds you of the knowledge in these topics, so you have to get prepared, right? Um, what I want to say is that whenever you receive the questions, the first thing you have to do is to read through the questions and highlight the keywords. So let's get started. So explain one reason why the global shift of industry has had negative impacts on some people in the developed world. So I will give you a few seconds to highlight the keywords throughout the questions. Okay, I think also the bond titles in these questions also give you some ideas about what is the important informations. So let's go through it together. So firstly, you can see that one is the keywords. Explain one reasons why the global shifts of the industry has had negative impacts on some people in the developed worlds. So this is basically the keywords that you are gonna bear in mind when you are thinking of the structure and how to answer it, so that you won't straight away from the core idea of the questions. And the second thing is that no need to be hurried to answer the questions. The second thing is that you need to focus on the scores, the points of the questions that you may have. So we can notice that this is a four scores questions, which means that you don't need to dive deep and you don't need to give examples or a complicated case study for your answers, because you will waste time on that and you are not going to gain more than 4 points, even though you answer more. Yes. So, and now let's get started. Um, so how do we come up with some ideas about the structures or how to answer these questions? Do you have some ideas? And you can tell me what is your logic behind. Okay, and now I will share my way to deal with the questions in terms of geography. So in this case, developed words, for example, this is an HIC. And also, what is happening right now is the industry that's shifting from HIC to LIC, less developed world. And then we are now assessing the impacts of that, like the consequence of that is not about the course. So make sure that you bear that in mind. So whenever we think of the impacts or so-called consequence, you have to bear in mind that for both institutes, there are positives and negative impacts. And what the question is asking right now is this part, is the negative impacts of HIC, the developed words. So, and then now we are quite understand about what's happening right now and how do we answer these questions. I will give you some hints. Whenever you are asked some questions related to the impacts, the consequence, or the cause of something, you may think from 5 dimensions. So I will write down here. Firstly is the most important stuff, geographical aspects, or so-called environmental, because we are studying geography. So of course, that's the priority that you have to think of. And the second is social. The third is economic. But usually we analyze them together, so-called social, economic. Sorry for my handwriting, but I believe that you can get my point. And the fourth one is political. And what is the last one? Can you think of that? It's demographic. So-called population stuff. It's also related to the social stuff, but we have to analyze them separately in most of the cases. So After that, can you try to think from these five dimensions and try to come up with the negative impacts on the developers? Actually, we later will try to list it out all of the positive and negative impacts for both developed and underdeveloped countries, so that when the questions change the directions to us, like for example, the positive impacts for the people in the underdeveloped worlds, you are going to answer that as well. So, have you done with thinking? And now let's take a look at it together. The negative impacts on some people in the developed worlds, because the question highlights that it's the people in the developed worlds. So this is the subject. How can you think of that? What will happen if the industry shift away from this country? What will happen to these countries and the citizens in this country? So from the social aspects, we can think of because the industry are shifting away so that the job supplies in the job markets will decrease while the demands remain unchanged, right? So we can think of that in terms of social aspects, unemployment rates increase, right? And this is you only need to come up with one ideas, like one reasons, and then you are going to explain that in detail. And here you can see there are 4 points. So it means that there are 4 layers of your answers, and for each layers, they are connected to each other, like logically, but they are not the same. It means that you should not explain or repeating yourself on the same stuff. Otherwise, you will not gain extra points. So what is the next? For example, unemployment will lead to what? Exactly. The tax revenue will decrease is in term from the government's perspective, right? And also it's actually also impacting the governments. The unemployment benefits or subsidy increase. So at the same time, government's income decrease, but at the same time, the payments increase. So it will lead to the financial stress for government, right? Financial stress. So what's next? When governments don't have money, what will happen? Yeah, exactly. Less investment on public infrastructure or services. Infra or service. I'm using abbreviation so that we save some times. And what's next? What will happen? Yeah, so if there is less investment on the public infrastructure and services, so the services and infrastructure that can enjoy by the citizens will be reduced. So people's life will be harder, and especially at a time when most of them are, or some of them are getting unemployed. So the social tension will increase, and political instability. So that's the whole logic chain, right? From here, points, the seconds in terms of governments, the third impacting on the investment, and lastly, reflects on the whole society, right? That's the logic of these questions. And now let's take a look at the marks game, whether we answer it right or whether you catch the point. Yeah, exactly. Unemployment is the examples that given by the Bureau. And unemployment reduce local income exactly, and reduce tax revenue exactly, and investment decline in infrastructure. That's exactly what we are talking about, right? So But the Mars scheme didn't talks about the political instability, so you may also ignore that. But you have to ensure that each layer of answers they're connected to each other, but they're not the same. Otherwise, you will not get the point. Okay, and now let's move on to the next questions. Assess the view that globalization inevitably damages the physical environment. What is the key points here? Keywords. Yeah, globalization is a keyword. Sorry, let me change the color. Globalization is a keyword. Damage the physical environments? True. But actually, I want to emphasize that the most important things that you have to focus on or be aware of is this word, assess. What does assess means? It means that you need to evaluate these questions from both sides, the positive sides and the negative sides. And then next, we look at the scores of it, the points. It has 12 scores, which means that you need to raise examples, solid examples in detail, and also case study. So you can bring numbers and country as the example. So now, after that, we can now started to thinking of the dimensions that we may structure up to for our answer. So what could you think of at first? What is different between this question and the last questions? True, it's because here it mentioned emphasize about the physical environments. It means the geography, right? Geographical aspects. So you only need to talk about the geographical impacts of that. And then we will now like trying to divide them into two aspects, the positive and the negative, brought by globalization. And from the positive sides, what can you think of? Because this is, oh, what I want to give you the hint is that because it is a 12 points questions, so you got to, I suggest you to raise 2 points, 2 points for each, like 2 points for each side. Why is that? We'll look at the mask scheme later because it contains uh, AO1 and AO2, which is 3 score, 9 score. So I suggest you to raise four points for like the both sides in total, so that you can make sure that you answer it well-roundedly and do not give them the chance to deduct your mark. So let's come back to the questions. From the positive sides, what can you think of? Globalization will not. Okay. Let's take a look at the negative side first because uh actually the agreements of this question is the negative side. So let's take a look at the negative side first. Sorry for that. Um, Negative sides. What is the negative sides? Cannot think of? Let me give you some hints. Whenever you think of globalization, you may think of the flow. Globalization boosts flow. Why is that? Because, and the flow of what? Basically, the flow of materials, people, also called labor. And what? Technology and knowledge, right? And also money, etc. So based on these hints, what can you think of to answer these questions? Yeah, exactly. When we consider the first aspects, materials, the flow of products, no matter it's the raw materials or the final products, it consider into the flow of materials. So globalization boosts the productions and consumption. And what would happen? You will boost the bloom of manufacturing, right? Manufacturing industry is basically talking about the factories. And let me delete this so that we have some space. And what's next? I'm now writing like help you to structure the answers instead of the whole paragraph so that we save some time and then you are clear about the logic. And what's next? Manufacturing industry? It will release greenhouse gas, right? Exactly, greenhouse gas emissions. What is the most prominent greenhouse gas? Yeah, CO2. And what will happen next? Yeah, global warming. Exactly. Great. Global warming is the increase of temperature globally, right? Yeah, true. And what would happen? Glacier melts. And and what? Yeah, wildflower, a fire. Yeah, I think that's pretty enough for this point. And then you probably need to give some examples, right? Remember the examples. You can take the examples of some LICs or like emerging, emerging countries such as China and India, which we will take a look at the case study of China later. And what is the second point? The flow of material? What can I think of? Yes, true. Like globalization will boost agriculture, right? So also boost the use of fertilizer. What do fertilizer brings? Contamination due to the release of NOx material released to the water body. What will happen? Eutrophication. And then you are going to explain these ideas. What is eutrophication? Yeah, it's basically like um too much nutrients entry into the water body and then boost the algae to bloom so that it covers the water surface and so the sunlight and oxygen cannot go through like penetrate through the water body and so that's the ecosystem and the life underwater will just extinct. So that's pretty bad. It brings to brings to the loss of species. Yeah. And you also need to raise the examples of that, right? And we are now not sorry on the examples because we can now first come to the ideas and list out the bullet point first. So that's you may have some idea how to answer this kind of questions, and especially it has so many scores. And from the negative sides, oh, sorry for that. I wrote it in the positive sides. Yeah, I'm pretty sorry. Okay, let's change the sign first here. Okay, now let's consider the positive sides. Why does globalization won't damage the physical environment? Why is that? Consider the flow here. Yeah, the flow of techniques, technology improve. It's become like there's better technology and knowledge so that the capability of managing the environments increase. And then what will happen? The environments won't get worse. You'll probably get better off. And you're going to raise examples of that. And also there's a lot of chain between these two points and you got to like explain more detail and connect the logic together. I'm just listing out the structure right now. What is the example of that? I'll give you one. The carbon capture and storage. So this technology is basically like utilize the atmosphere capture technology to capture the carbons from the atmosphere that we emitted before, and then insert it in underground, like to between the impermeable layers, so that it will stably store underground and won't release because there are lots of space on the ground, so that you can safely store the CO2 over there. That's the brief explanation of the logic behind. And next, what is the next? Yeah, exactly. The flow of money, the GDP of country increase. So that's the capability, like financially, to solve the problem. For the country to solve the environmental problems, also increase. And what's next? The example, right? We can raise the China example. So, and we're going to talk about it right now. The case study of China. So, the environmental problems due to globalization. And whenever you were asked about the environmental problems, you can think from four dimensions. These four. You don't have to like describe them or mention them all, but you can it can give you some ideas about from which directions you can think of the answer will be. Firstly, the pollutions, water and air, right? And brings health problem. Land degradations, overexploitation of resources, loss of biodiversity. And these are some of the statistics that you can refer to like enrich your paragraphs in your answers. So these three actually they are linked together because land degradation is caused by the overexploitation of resources, and it will also cause the loss of biodiversity. And then we will come to the next slide. What is this? Yeah, it's the fog, the haze. And where it is? Yeah, obviously it's in Beijing. So Beijing was well known of its air pollutions back in 2013 and 2014. That is basically a decade ago. So at that time, the visibility of the city is pretty low and the air pollution is pretty severe. So that was it's like a history of the Beijing, and right now it's getting much better. Now we can see some statistics of Beijing, specifically related to air pollutions. So this is the graph shows the average annual PM 2.5 air pollutions in Beijing. So we can see that among these scales, the air pollutions in 2013 is the worst. And from 2020 something, it becomes stable and fluctuates a bit for these years. And Beijing really did a lot to like mitigate the air pollutions by this kind of examples that I listed here. It consists of three phases for the strategy implementations. So included like across a few decades. So you can take a close look at it later because we are out of time right now. So let's come to the next slide. And after the case study, I believe that you will have more ideas about how to answer the questions, like the 12 points questions. And now we can take a look at the math scheme. The AO1 I mentioned before is consists of 3 marks and AO2 is 9 marks. The difference between them is that AO1 is like you listed out the bullet points and like the aspects you mentioned about, but AO2 is like the further explanations and expansions of your ideas and also include the examples and case study supports to enrich your ideas and make it more persuasive. So what we can see here is like first at AO1, the dimensions that the masking mentioned before is exactly what I told you. Like consider from this kind of aspects, and that's pretty enough to for AO1 to for you to gain 3 marks because um even though the mark scheme lists out a lot of aspects, it doesn't mean that you need to mention them all. You just need to mention a few, and which is really enough for you to achieve 12 credits. And now let's take a look at the AO2 part. It's the explanation part. Here, the manufacturing industry that we mentioned before, the fertilizer, eutrophication, and species loss, which is also the points that we mentioned before. And here comes to the indirect effects, which is the mark scheme actually give a really good structure about it, like it divided into direct and indirect effects, which is pretty clear, but actually it's also acceptable for you to like mix them together as long as you really like mention the points that it listed in the mark scheme because it's different from the 12 credits mark scheme with the 4 credits mark scheme because for the 4 credits questions you can also mention the points outside of mark scheme as long as you can make up your logics and like explain everything well-roundedly, you will get points. But in the 12 credits questions, because it's really like complete and it lists a lot of aspects and lots of dimensions that covers 90% of a student's answer. So if you are answering outside of the masking, it's really dangerous. You're probably not getting marks from it because it means that you will probably like misunderstanding the questions and like stray away from the core idea of the questions. So make sure you notice that. And we can also like take a look at the masking, like the dimensions and the ideas they listed out is pretty useful for you to frame up your ideas in the next questions. So, and also in a similar type of questions. What it also mentions is that ITC developments in communications. Oh, what is ITC? So ITC is the ICT is the um, information communication and technology. So that's basically about like the network development and yeah, the IT development, basically a technology. And yeah, it leads to more fossil fuel usage because of the sorry the more trading happen like multinationally and also the transportation happen like across the boundaries. Yeah, that makes sense. And also let's take a look at the indirect effects, which I found is really interesting that it mentions that the economic development will lead to more car ownerships, which uh adds the carbon emissions from the vehicles and also like the second home report and air travels on holiday, which is basically like the transportations and household usage. And it also consumes a lot of fossil fuels energy, which is non-renewable energy and having great environmental impacts. And what's next is the Oh yeah, it's the interaction between pollutions like acid rains, Asian haze, like the Beijing haze I mentioned before. It also impacts the uh like the near around provinces in China, such as Tianjin. And also like next is nuclear contamination, global warming. So basically they actually interact together, like they're interdependent. So that's also the points you may think of that. And the next part is the um, negative negative sides considerations. Yeah. However, like let's see what it mentions. A few countries has pursued routes to development, like investment in green energy. That's exactly what Beijing did in phase 3 and 2. And it also mentions the ICT developments allows remote conferencing. That's also the flip side of the use of the increased use of fossil fuels brought by the development of ICT. It reinforced the remote working model, such as what we did during the COVID-19. So yeah, it also reduced the carbon footprint. It's pretty well-rounded analysis of this. And also what we mentioned before is also included in the mark scheme. So I believe that it will also be credited. So and this is the course today because we are out of time, so we are not going to discuss more questions. And next class, I will try to present sample answers written by me to show you how to link them together because we just talk about the structure and the logics between the bullet points in this course. And next course, we will try to link them up and form a whole paragraph that can gain a full marks or at least close to a full marks. So thank you for your attendance and see you next class.